the first area of focus of the 4 areas of focus is open throat. Well, what's open throat singing? Well, open throat singing is when you open your throat and sing, which makes a sound sort of like this. Oh, as opposed to more of a non-open throat, ah style of sound. Now this is an adjustment that you can make in your voice that really dramatically changes the sound of the style. Learning how to master open throat singing takes a lot of practice because these are coordinating muscles that your body's not really used to coordinating in this way when you're singing. Most people, when they start off as students, as they go higher, their larynx goes higher and higher in their throat as they sing. Now, open throat, what's actually happening is the muscle groups that take your larynx down and lift your soft palate are related. So when you open your throat, it's like a rubber band effect in the back of your throat. You create space. Now, word of caution when you're working on open throat styles of singing, like art song and opera, classical styles, as well as classical musical theater, you have to be very careful not to depress your larynx or over-open your throat. You'll feel pressure down here. It'll feel real uncomfortable. Everything you do in your singing should be free from tension, or as free from tension as possible. So pay very close attention to that. Now here's Billy and Leigh demonstrating open throat sounds. Now Billy and Leigh will demonstrate non-open throat sounds. Okay, now what are the styles that use open throat? What are the styles that don't use as open throat of a sound? Well, open throat styles would be opera, art song, and classical musical theater. Now, most people who are just starting off singing aren't quite sure what art song is. Art song is songs that are in the classical tradition that are typically performed in recitals, usually with piano accompaniment, and they're considered literature or poetry set to music. So those would be styles of singing that do definitely use open throat. Now, very important for men and both women to understand the differentiation between how to sing different roles in classical musical theater. When I'm talking about classical musical theater, I'm referring to musicals from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Basically, look at Rodgers and Hammerstein as the model for that time period. Now, if you look at the traditional musical, like Oklahoma, for instance, or Kiss Me Kate's another one, if you look at those styles of musical theater, you'll notice that the romantic leads, like Curly in Oklahoma, and Laurie in Oklahoma both have very open throat sound, almost a very operatic production of sound. Well, if you look at Ado Annie in that musical, she has more of a non-open throat sound, and she's more of a character voice, as well as the role of Will Parker. He's not as open-throated of a sound. So when you're auditioning for shows in classical musical theater, you need to be aware of how open throat the character, someone would portray the character. Now, if we look at other styles of singing that use non-open throat sounds, we would be looking at styles like jazz. If you listen to Frank Sinatra or Ella Fitzgerald, they don't have this operatic openness to the back of their throats when they're singing. As well as pop singers, their throats, they don't have a lot of open space, hollow sounding space in the back of their throats when they sing, as well as contemporary musical theater. You'll actually find that contemporary musical theater, a lot of it follows the models of pop singing, even though contemporary musical theater has changed dramatically over the last several years. Now here Billy and Leigh will demonstrate songs that use open throat sound.
La donna immobile, qual piuma al vento, muta d'accento e di pensiero. Were to change by tomorrow, and a fleet in a mile.
Billy and Leigh will demonstrate non-open throat styles of singing.
Again, I'll explain. It means that my heart's at your command. I could say,
Not shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says.
fix. I always say, come on, let's go. Just when I ought to say nix. When a person.
And by some chance I had brought my dice along, and there I stood, and I hollered, someone fade me.
With some glamour guaranteeing every fiber of my being is displayed to
How can I leave her? Where would I start?
This is how it works. It feels a little worse than when we drove our hearse.
Legends I knew as a child have fallen to idols of clay, and I feel this empty.
So that's open throat. Now, I don't want you to think about open throat and non-open throat as an absolute black and white thing. Choosing the amount of space or amount of depth or color that you have in your sound is something that you know, is going to be different from person to person, and is also going to be different from from the different directors you want. Some are going to say, can you give me a little more of an open sound? Listen, that sounds a little more open. It sounds a little too classical. You've got to be able to be flexible with it. It's not a black and white thing. In fact, something I do want you to understand is even when you're singing non-open throat sounds, you should still feel some lift in the back of your throat. Your soft palate just lifts just a teeny bit as you're singing in those styles. So I understand this is why it's so important that you do have a voice teacher.